What's up guys, welcome to the Q&A video. First things first, let's address the elephant in the room, this. The room has only got messier since the last time I did a video of this nature. My ENTJ housemate is currently moving some things around. Rest assured, my ISTJ housemate has been notified and comforting measures will be implemented when this video comes out. Figured it's not the worst thing in the world for you guys to have something to look at, given that this is likely to be a long video, but I do apologize to all the SJs out there. Secondly, whoa! You guys really went to town on the questions, didn't ya? We had some really deep questions come in and I'm unfortunately not going to be able to answer them all because I cannot in good conscience answer some of them because I am not, and this is an opportunity to give the disclaimer for the video, I am not a psychotherapist, I don't have a psychology degree, and I don't feel qualified to answer some of these questions, but thank you for the interest. Thank you for your submissions. I got some really good questions, both on Instagram and YouTube, and I'll just dive straight in because there are a lot to go through. This is future Kristin jumping on to say that I filmed over 1 hour of footage today, so if you want shortcuts to particular questions, jump down to the description and I will have timestamp shortcuts to each question. So first question, have you ever thought about collaborating with other MBTI YouTubers? I'd love to see that. I have done some collaborations, have enjoyed every single one of them. You can see them on my YouTube channel in the collaborations playlist. I assume you guys mean comedy collaborations. I would like to do some of those in the future, but I'm juggling quite a few things at the moment and I just haven't put that plan into action yet, but hopefully stay tuned and you'll see something coming in the future. Classic vague EP statement right there. Next question, what's an ESFP stereotype that annoys you because it's inaccurate, and what's an ESFP stereotype that annoys you because there's actually a bit of truth to it? The one that annoys me because it's inaccurate is the one that says that we are, I guess, stupid, or that we don't have the attention span to sit down and like read a book or think deeply about things. We absolutely do. And a stereotype that annoys me because there's a bit of truth to it is how we are at parties. Even though I am 28 years old, I still have very short attention spans and I am very distractible and highly energetic, confident, and probably loud at parties. Feel like that'll never change. Do you think it's possible for a type to enter a state of stress so long that they eventually exhibit the personality of the shadow type even after returning to their normal state? For example, ENFP, INFJ. I've inserted these comments because I thought they were interesting. I like what Edward Zhao said. I don't think it's permanent or wounds can be healed and learned from, in my opinion. I agree. My shadow type, according to the shadow functions theory, is ISFJ, and I feel like the way that an ISFJ's mind works is so different from how my mind usually works. I can't imagine a universe in which I'm not very extroverted, leading with SE, adaptable, like spontaneous, adventurous, like really intrigued with new sensory experiences that I haven't experienced before without any filter before in diving straight into them. I don't think I've ever come off as an ISFJ. I do understand how people can change when there are states of stress, but I think that when I'm in a state of stress, my T, E, and NI probably come out more so in an unhealthy way. Given that our top functions are the ones that we get the most joy and fulfillment spending time in, when we turn back to normal, it would make sense that we're back in those functions. So not sure about that, but please leave your thoughts on that one in the comments. Next one, you say you're an ESFP, you can relate to INTPs the least of any personality types, so how do you go about writing and performing the INTP sketches of your 16 personality sketches? Thank you so much, Dr. Mendo. This guy answered this better than I could, so I'm just gonna leave his comment on the screen here. Next question, can a person's personality type change after years, or if something happens, how common is this? Or if a person experiences some negative or traumatic things, then can that person get mistyped? This is a very common question. I'm not going to speak into the PTSD element of that. I'm not a huge believer in type changing. I think the theory that type can change, though not in all circumstances, in a lot of them, can come from the fact that maybe the Jungian 8 cognitive function model hasn't been quite understood or observed in action yet, because it's important to recognize that our cognitive functions aren't about our behavior, but it's about how we got to the behavior. It's the mental steps of how we got to the behavior. So two people of completely different types could be exhibiting like the same behavior, and two people of the same type can have an argument about different opinions of things, and you might think, oh, they're different types, but it doesn't mean that. It just means how they got there is different. And that, you know, that comes from a whole bunch of factors like nurture and stuff. I come from a family in which all 6 of us are like E types, so we're all running with an extroverted function. And when I look back, it's just always been that way. Even when I was younger, I was very shy. I didn't really talk until I was about 14. I know, can't really believe that, can you? Even though I might have been perceived as an introvert, I still really liked being around people and around the fun, and I still placed a great amount of value on my sensory experiences. So I do think I was still using extroverted sensing. It's just that our understanding of extrovert and introvert, like in the mainstream world, gets in the way of us understanding what those extroverted functions look like, and the fact that they can present as introverted, quote unquote, people sometimes. In regards to the acting industry, always had a interest in jumping into acting. I'm really glad that I am doing it now on my own terms, which is hugely thanks to you guys. So thank you for your support the whole way through. I really appreciate all of your compliments and this comment. Thank you, unknown person.
Random intermission to give a shout out to Voss Health, my favorite mental health app. Guys, tracking your mental health is important, so if you want to check out the app from Voss Health, jump down to the link in my description. Okay, back to the video.
There are two questions. Number one, what are the types you get along with, best and worst? I've spoken into this before. I don't like to comment on this because each person that I meet of the same type is different from the next. I can speak into what types I understand the least, and that's pretty much anyone who uses TI in their top 2 slots. Yeah, INTPs are probably the type I understand the least, but I have some INTPs in my life who I love very dearly and enjoy talking to. And number 2, name one thing you admire the most in each type. Okay, let's see if I can do this really quickly. ESTP, their ability to just be present and not really care so much what others think of them. These are all generalizations, by the way, of course, please. Stereotypes, generalizations, as long as that disclaimer has been made and understood. ISTPs, their ability to be by themselves and get engaged in those sensory activities that I love, but they don't need to be around people to do it, whereas I will get bored after 5 minutes. So I really admire that they can be lone wolves in the sense, and they have a really good idea of who they are as a result. ISFPs, I admire that they're very similar to me, but they use the FI filter before they act on the SE, whereas I act on the SE before I apply the FI filter, and I've worked very hard in my life to change that. But when I see it in an ISFP, I'm like, yeah, cool, you do the thing that I want to do better. ESFPs, I admire that they have a lot of love to give, so expressive, and they really just chase their passions and know how to make it work for them. ENFPs, I admire the love that they have for life and how easily they, compliments just flow out of them and how they can just come up with ideas just from nothing, seemingly. INFPs, they have this incredible sense of self and who they are, and they want to be authentic to that, and they will fight for that until they die. INFJs, they seem to have a really good understanding of where they kind of want to go in life, and they have ideals that they know they'd like to chase, and they're really good because I guess they have bottom SE at being like, no, this thing isn't going to help me right now, not going to do it. Obviously, I admire that because I'm flipped. ENFJs, literally the best at just being able to give a person what they need in the moment. They'll be able to switch into psychotherapist mode so quickly and give the people in the room what they need to feel better on a deep level, which I super appreciate. ISTJs, their ability to just live healthy lifestyles, exercise, eat healthily, even if it's not particularly pleasant in an SE way, but they do it anyway because they know it's good for them, and that is my Everest. ESTJs, just so good at getting things done, foreseeing how they're gonna get done, and they don't have that people-pleasing tendency that sometimes holds me back. ISFJs, in my experience, just super giving and warm, and they have seemingly a lot of time to sit down and listen to people, which is incredible. The ESFJs in my life seem to have this really good sense of justice and what's right, and they will fight for that in the world. And they just have an endless amount of love to give and are so good at acts of service. ENTJs, just incredible how they are able to foresee all of these bigger picture elements. I have an ENTJ housemate and she's really good at coming up with ideas, and we're really good at working together in terms of me actualizing the plan and her sort of steering me in the direction of where to take the plan. INTJs, idea machines, they just seem to think so deeply about the bigger picture and deeper meaning behind everything, and I feel intimidated when I get into any kind of intelligent conversation with them, and I feel like they've thought through and critiqued every basic argument that I can come up with on the spot, which I mean isn't the case. It's just my own fears coming in. But I super admire how they're able to go deep real quick, and they have a passion to do so, so it's something that they're really good at. ENTPs, I just can't with their ability to just generate rebuttals to everything that you have to say because they've already thought and logicized about so many different possibilities and outcomes to everything. So that's why I guess that stereotype would be in the debaters, because they already know what they think about things. They want to test people's own methods of getting to the points that they have, which is that TI plus the NE, of course. And INTP is just their thirst for knowledge and their ability to sit down for hours and actually soak something in properly so that they can articulate it in a way that's actually true and informative. That is my Everest. I feel like I have a lot of Everests. Next question, I found that some people are very obviously one type, but it's not easy to tell for some. Are there resources you recommend to get better at recognizing functions / types? This is hard because I can only recommend what worked for me as an SE user who places so much value on external representation of type. Look, for me, what worked was reading and watching, in fact mostly watching or listening to podcasts in the car, a plethora of different sources, YouTube channels, online websites, podcasts, to get a whole bunch of different perspectives on what the different functions look like in people. And when you get all of those different definitions, you then apply it to what you're seeing in the real world, and you pick up the way in which people are communicating and seeing, okay, that's what was common, like mutually agreed upon by the sources that I watched, that is a SI judgment that's being put in place there, or like that's an NI deep dive that's happening right there. So for me, it's been about gaining a whole bunch of different information from different sources and then applying it to what I'm seeing in the real world, because that's what I place huge amounts of value on. And then finding commonalities, like common links between everything you're reading. And I think that will make you more accurate at understanding when you're seeing types present. It's always harder for me to type someone or to suspect someone's type when they're running with an introverted function, though I can usually tell straight away when they are. Extroverted functions are quite easy to identify when they're presenting as a person's first function. For me, it's always about, okay, what appears to be that person's lead extroverted function, and if they're an E type, it'll be quite obvious because they're using it so much, and then working out what that auxiliary introverted function is, but that can only happen when you are spending more time with them, not in like a party setting. A lot of the time it needs to be like spending more time with them in like a deeper conversation or a conversation about something with a bit more substance, and then working out what introverted function they're using to sort of filter everything, or what introverted function they've used to filter things. There's lots to say on this. I might do another video on this. Maybe not. I don't know. We'll see. Point is, it's been a journey. Do your research, make observations. I don't know, like as an SE user, that's really important to me. Audience, please feel free to drop your thoughts on this question in the comments. I feel at this point, this is going to be like a 5-part video. There's so many questions to talk about, but I want to open them up to the floor. Next question is a 2-part, and I'll do the second part first. There are psychologists who disregard MBTI as just another form of astrology. What is your take on it, and how do you explain the same? Look, I understand why it has received critique from the psychology community. For me, the proof is in the pudding. It's quite obvious to me that I can see that people are using different cognitive means of arriving at processes, and I can see when someone is making judgments based on what is good for the shared values, the universal values of the people in the room, versus when someone is taking in the world or judging the world based on what is functional, and when someone is speaking from a place of value or speaking from a place of logic. All of these things are quite obvious to me, and MBTI creates like a really articulate system and terminology for these things in the 8 cognitive functions. Of course, it's not extremely deep, but it is absolutely a jumping board from which to leap into the world of understanding personality type, cognitive modes, and how they are naturally going to create strengths, eagle vision for some people in some areas, and blind spots in other areas, which allows us to then extend grace to those people and understand that that's how they are and that we can't expect them to change. We have to just learn how to communicate with that particular cognitive function that they might be using. To me, there seems not to be any scientific way to prove MBTI. For me, it would have to be assessing people when they're not aware that they're being assessed. With the tests that we take online, we're always aware that we are being tested, and we're self-assessing ourselves. So there are always going to be biases that are at play that we aren't even aware that we're using. To me, like the most effective testing method would be like, okay, you set up a scenario, and you have different people come in and interact with the scenario and then leave and watch based on, say, like, okay, like maybe you're in a kitchen, a person comes in and a cup, I don't know, cup full of like hot liquid spills or something, or some other disaster happens in the kitchen. I don't know, clearly I haven't thought this through. And like you would perceive, okay, does this person already know the way they're going to deal with this? Have they already worked it out? How quick are their reflexes? Or are they sort of like analyzing it away like, okay, what's the best way to deal with this particular situation, and perceive whether they're like approaching it as a blank canvas or something that they have already brought judgments onto. These kinds of things are how you like analyze what cognitive functions people are using. And I think if we set up like, I don't know, like a box, but again, then people would know it's a test. It's so hard to actually test the cognitive functions and to prove that they're a thing, you know, in a way that's like digestible for the whole community. Because the only way to test people is to do it when they're not aware that they're being tested or watched. Do you know what I mean? I guess I've kind of touched on the first part of the question, how do you expect your viewers, me including obviously, to grow while understanding MBTI? I would say to not make it your be all and end all. Use it as like, again, like a gateway into deeper psychology and deeper understanding of the nuances behind different personalities. I only want to spread the message that psychological types should be used for growth. I've said it multiple times rather than as an excuse for behavior. My camera is moving slightly. Interesting. Well, Kristin, it might be because you're using one of those $5, what's the word? That thing when it has the sticky things and you stick it on the thing. Anyway, moves on. TA Trickster, play again. Yeah, I want us all to grow. I want MBTI to help to be a gateway for us to understand that people with whom we are interacting every day are using different functions from us. They're not going to understand us in the same way. They're going to perceive things in different ways. And this all points to one of my biggest passions, which is communication in relationships, and understanding, extending grace to people's different modes of communication makes relationships better, and MBTI helps us to understand this. So don't make it your be all and end all. Don't use it to limit yourself. You know what? I'm going to talk too much about this if I go into it. Please view this video, I hope that's the right side, in which I talk more about this topic / I'll put in the description. Next question, and this is really interesting. It's a long one, so I'll leave it up there. This is the concept of ambiverts and whether you can switch type based on whether you're learning to jump into more time spent in your second function or something. My thoughts on this is that it would be pretty hard to change permanently to like your second function when you're used to using that first one. In my life, I can absolutely see how I spend more time in my FI when I'm in like a passionate conversation with someone. But even so, I'm still using my SE because I'm deliberately choosing to block out all my sense data to engage in that conversation with someone, and someone who had bottom SE wouldn't be able to do that. They'd be more overwhelmed by the sense data, whereas I'm so good at SE that it's no problem for me to block that out. But the FI is running the show, but I'm still using the SE in some sense. And there are times when I'm using my TE when I really need to get things done and I'm up on my feet, moving, not really talking to people. You could argue that I'm spending a lot of time in my TE then, but I'm still using SE and FI in all of those circumstances in ways that you wouldn't even be able to articulate. I can't even articulate them because it's the only mode that I know, but it would look different compared to someone who's using TE with SI, for instance. Maybe a TE plus SI user would like have particular ways that they need to do things that are the same every time. For me, I would trust my ability to manipulate the sense data around me to get it done in whatever way works in the moment. So even though I might be spending more time in functions, to change those functions to my dominant function, I just don't see happening. I always want to hear your guys' experience in this field. Please tell me if you really do feel like you've changed type in terms of those first two functions. But for me, even though I do sometimes utilize my FI a whole lot, it doesn't change the fact that when I'm in my most comfortable, natural mode, I'm acting first, I'm always doing first, and I'm not running things through the FI first. So it's very clear to me that I use SE as my first function, even though I am able to switch into those other functions for long periods of time. I'd love to know how much the ESFP skits are actually drawn from your personal experience as an ESFP, and how much is exaggerating for the sake of skit. I exaggerate so much. I don't relate personally to all of the situations that I've put forward as an ESFP in my skits, but I am able to say that my natural tendency in a lot of circumstances would be that situation that I present in the skits. It's just that for whatever reason I'm able to like hold back or like temper it in a sense because I have, you know, my FI values or my nurture or my manners, whatever it is, like tempering those things. So for instance, I don't know, what's an example? 16 personalities around their crush. I was like walked into the room like dancing all that jazz from Chicago as the ESFP. Now, I've never done this when I've been interested in someone like that overtly, but I literally always want to be singing, and I have done it less overtly in that a song will come on and I will just naturally get up and like perform, I guess you could call it. That's just the mode that I'm in. I do it for performance's sake. So I can definitely relate to the ESFP in all my skits in that this is something that my brain would jump to doing, or this is a natural tendency I would have if I didn't have all these other factors filtering or tempering my response. And that's what I try to do with all of the types, which it's the only way to get a universal, broad, semi-accurate fitting of the stereotypes is to think what would their natural tendencies be without those other factors of nurture, morals, whatever it is. Which is why you guys can't relate to every single thing that I put forward for your type, but you might relate to 1 in 10 or something. You and your sister discussed TE tone in your first video together, and it was mind-blowing because I hadn't realized that it was a thing before, which it absolutely is. Do you think the other functions have tones too, and what do you think they're like? I think that extroverted judging functions are the only real tones that I've noticed. The TE tone is real because it works in conjunction with FI, which means that it's a value that one holds within themselves, but people who have FI are not necessarily externally expressive with those emotions as opposed to FEs. So the FE tone, in contrast to the TE tone, is a lot softer and a lot warmer and a lot more receiving of, I guess, people around them who have thoughts and opinions, because they are operating from a place of finding the communal universal values that will work for the tribe. So they want to hear everyone's perspective and opinions, and so they'll be softer, more receptive to that, whereas a TE will be like, no, but this is my FI value that I'm trying to portray here. Like, yeah, there might be universal truth, but I'm trying to communicate to you my truth. Oh, I hate that phrase. But FI is like, okay, yours is, especially top FI or secondary FI is like, yours is equally valid as mine, but I still want to communicate my passion that I have for it. In terms of tone, I would say that FE and the TE tone are the tones that I've noticed are pretty reliable across the board in terms of working out whether someone uses top or auxiliary TE versus top or auxiliary FE, or even tertiary. Wow, we have 6 questions here. Number 1, before finding out you're an ESFP, do you think you're another type? No, I was typed straight away. My sister is an ESFP and I never really doubted that. That being said, I have obviously learnt more about the MBTI theory and the Jungian cognitive functions to refine my understanding of ESFP, and after doing that, I'm still convinced I'm an ESFP. So no, I haven't really ever thought that I'm a different type. Number 2, how did you find out about MBTI? My sister introduced me to it. This is a video here or in the description where I go into more detail about that. Can you tell I'm trying to talk like heaps fast because I know this video is going to be super long. Number 3, what editing software do you use? I use software called KineMaster, which was really great, really easy. I use it all on my phone. I've done everything with just my phone for this channel so far, hoping to upgrade soon. Would recommend, great app. Number 4, how do you come up with the ideas? I'll just be somewhere in the world, well, used to, now in lockdown I'm just in my house, but I'll, you know, be in the world and I'll see a scenario and I'll be like, that could be a fun scenario to do. Or I'll watch a TV show and a scenario will present itself and I'll be like, that could be a fun scenario to do. Or people in my life will suggest scenarios, or you guys in the comments will suggest the scenarios, which I love. Thank you so much. Some of the comments you guys give me and the ideas, I'm like, oh, that's amazing. I could never have thought of that. Number 5, which is your favorite MBTI type? Don't have one. Number 6, if you could change your type, would you? What would you change it into? Wouldn't change my type permanently, but I would be interested to be in the mind of an INTP for one day, I think. Question, if you're 50-50 on one trait, for example, 49% feeling, but it sometimes switches to thinking when you retake the test, how do you determine which one wins out in your overall personality? Thank you, Rose, for your question. Thank you, everyone, for your questions. Well, this is based on taking the test, which I don't actually really subscribe to in terms of working out your actual cognitive functions. The very fact that you can switch so easily in that 1% from thinking to feeling means that you are changing whether you're using a thinking or feeling function most of the time, and it could also change whether you're using introverted or extroverted feeling. For instance, an INFP versus an INTP, one uses FI and one uses FE. So if you're just flipping that 1%, it suddenly changes your cognitive functions. It's a huge change. It's the same with J and P as well. If you switch those two letters, all 4 of your functions are changing. So the test isn't actually the best way to determine your functions. There are some tests that are better than others online. There's lots of stuff out there on YouTube about this. Wish I could dive more into that. That's actually really fascinating, but I don't have time. So pressing on. I will try and link some videos that are helpful for you though, Rose, in the description of this video. So please check those out. I have 3 questions. 1, exactly how do you go about typing someone? I think I've already touched on that. Try and perceive what extroverted function they're using, and then what have they filtered everything through before it's come out. There are so many different ways to type people based on their functions that they're using. I might save that for another video because it's just too big a topic to get into now. 2, what are your thoughts on cognitive personality theory? Haven't dived into it so much. I really wish I had the time to do this. Juggling a lot of things at the moment, but I hope to dive into that one day. 3, do you think that a lot of people in the comment sections of your videos and in your MBTI community in general could be mistyped? I think it's likely. I think the main test that people use is 16personalities.com, which, you know, has its merits in some sense. I think the questions are just a little bit too broad to be able to narrow down functions, because we are all perceiving the questions in a different way in the first place because of our functions. I also have theories about that test skewing towards more N results than S results, because, for instance, one of the questions is, do you like going to a museum, which is clearly for Ns, right? Because you like looking at abstract art and that kind of thing. But I always answer strongly agree on that question, because the way I perceive it is like, oh, I'm at a museum, I'm with some friends, I've got coffee in my hand, having a great time, strongly agree. So that will naturally skew my result towards an N result. So that, I think, is my main problem with those tests. Question, if a type only uses their first and second functions for a long time, can they burn out and they have to recharge by using their third and fourth functions? This is very interesting. I think it's more likely that people would burn out after using their third and fourth functions too much, because they're the ones that you're not going to have as much joy and as much of a good time spending time in. So I think burning out in, for instance, my TE and my NI when I'm in like project mode or teacher mode or whatever it is, would mean that I need to bring in some SE or FI to rejuvenate my spirit and my zone and my vibe. When I spend time in my SE, FI, I'm so energized, love life. I can't imagine burning out spending time in those functions. What, however, does happen is another kind of burnout wherein I realize I haven't been using my third and fourth functions in a healthy way, and therefore I'm not like the best version of myself, or the most actualized version of myself, or the healthiest version of myself, in which case I'll make sure to like use those functions not by themselves, but filtering all my other functions through them. So like sitting by myself and like asking myself, what do I actually want to do in the future? What goals am I trying to actualize for the next month? Because that's hard enough for me. This is practicing NI, by the way. And then what am I going to do today to actualize those goals? How can I introspect to make sure that I'm applying filters before I act with my SE, which I'm doing most of the time without thinking, to ensure that I don't like talk down to myself later when I look back and I'm like, oh, Kristin, you should have known that this pattern would happen, but you didn't apply your NI filter. Anyway, so first 2 functions are where you get your joy, your love spending time in them. So I don't see burnout as much as spending time in the third and fourth functions. That's just my theory on that. Do you know each personality as friends in real life? Also, what do your friends think of your YouTube channel? I do actually know at least one person of each personality type in my life. Love it. There are types that I would love to have more friends of in my life, because I just like to collect all of this SE data about how different types manifest in the physical world, and I want to have more reference points to be able to nuance those thoughts and observations that I have. What do my friends think of my YouTube channel? No one was surprised that I started this up, because I've been that MBTI girl at parties for a long time. All of my friends are just like so supportive, and they think this is so great. They know that I have a passion for MBTI and psychology, and they know that I have a passion for acting and comedy, so they're just loving this for me, and I love them for supporting me. So thank you, friends, if you're watching. And it's so sweet because like even if they don't subscribe to the MBTI theory, they still will watch my videos and support me and like follow my Instagram. It's just the best. Love you guys. Which type do you understand the least? Probably INTP, as I said earlier. Which type is your favorite to roleplay? Probably ENFP, because I'm pretty sure you all understand that I like to make a meme out of ENFP. There's the correct balance of fun and easy enough to play, whereas some other types are like, I have a lot of fun coming up with the line that they're gonna say, but I take a bit longer to get that perfect facial expression or that right amount of softness in their tone or something. Do you attract certain types in particular? I have a lot of ENFP friends who attract a lot of INTP and INTJ. Do I attract certain types in particular? I don't think so. I think maybe a lot of introverted types would find me annoying at parties. So if I'm at a party, probably the extroverts would gravitate towards me. But I don't really have a lot of thoughts on this, to be honest. Thanks for the question though. Hi Kristin, how are you? I'm well, thank you. How are you? Good, I hope. Which of your MBTI skits is your personal favourite or the one you had the most fun filming? Good question. My favourite personality sketch, like without question until very recently, was part 2 of the 16 personalities dating their own type. I had a lot of fun because obviously this skit here was just like immensely energetic. It brought me energy to film that. Because I was dancing and singing and I just thought it was hilarious, and people in the comments really seem to enjoy that one, which I love. But the skit that has taken that title now is 16 personalities interacting in a horror movie, just because I put so much effort into that and it's practically a short film. And it was also one of the most fun to film as well because my housemate was on board, and every time we film together I actually get bloopers out of it, which is awesome, whereas when I'm by myself, bloopers are much harder to happen. The most fun to film though was 16 personalities on a walk, because we were out, it was lockdown, it was good, we were laughing, my housemate was there, and I just got a new camera phone, and so we were loving the quality of the visuals. Few questions here. When you meet someone new, do you tend to type them after some time? Used to do this, not so much anymore. I actively try not to because I think it can be harmful to do so. Do you have types you get along with the best? Again, uncomfortable making these broad claims. I really want to be able to allow people of all types to surprise me, because I wouldn't want people to assume that they can't get along with me just because I'm an ESFP, because I've worked really hard on fighting the natural tendencies of the ESFP that can steer towards vice. So I wouldn't want people to bring those judgments onto me, so I don't really want to bring them onto others. Have you ever mistyped yourself or had dives about your type? I've already answered that, not really. Do people say you seem like a different type than ESFP? People agree pretty much across the board that I'm an ESFP. I have been typed as an ENFJ sometimes because I have FE. Sorry, I say sometimes by you guys in the comments. Or an ENFP because I can come across as that sometimes, which I understand because ESFPs and ENFPs can come across as very similar sometimes. Or an ESTP again because it's clear that I use SE but that I also have the FE. But that's just from people in the comments. Everyone in my life that isn't on the internet agrees unanimously that I'm an ESFP. Hi Kristin, what do you think is the main reason why MBTI is not considered to be scientific? Because it's really hard to prove, unfortunately. It's not like we can jump into someone's brain in surgery and be like, yes, let's see whether it is in fact extroverted sensing that this person is using. Yep, we found it in the brain. Can confirm extroverted sensing, and it's labeled here for us and everything. Of course, I'm just being an idiot, but I do think it is something that's really hard to prove. On another reason, obviously, as well, is because the MBTI system was created by Catherine Cook Briggs and Isabel Briggs Myers, who were not psychologists. So a lot of people kind of just stop at that and say, like, there's no validity to this, but a lot of people don't know about the Jungian roots behind it. I think it's fair that people don't see it as like a definitive model by which to judge people's personalities. Absolutely. I think it's a really good starting point, but I don't like that it's like completely disregarded based on the fact that it was two women who created the letters, the decoding system, who didn't happen to be psychologists. Yeah, but I'm not a psychologist, so all I can talk about is how I've got value from the theory myself, and advise you guys to maybe take that into consideration when understanding your relationships and communication with others. Next question, is it possible for a person that categorizes themselves as an extrovert, for example, to be typed as an IXXX in MBTI and vice versa? Sometimes I feel like that concept we have of introvert and extroverts are a whole separate thing from 16 personality types. Absolutely. The common understanding of introverts is that you get your energy from being by yourself. Common understanding of extroverts is that you get your energy from being around others. That's so not true. When you look at the extroverted functions, they're getting energy from other things, not just people. So 100%, my ISTJ housemate, we typed her as an ESTJ because she's very talkative, enjoys being around people. That TE can be really clear sometimes, but after spending more time with her, we realized that the SI was running the shop most of the time. So I think this is totally possible. Hi Kristin, how do you prevent mistakenly typing yourself? I've identified myself as all of the NT types before, and I sometimes get very confused because each of the personality types have qualities I identify with, even after considering the cognitive functions. That's totally fair. I think it might be because, again, qualities that I identify with implies behavior. Like a lot of the descriptions that you'll see on the internet for the personality types are very like behavioral based, but the types can present completely differently in terms of behavior because it's about how you got there. So I think it's good to talk to someone who knows how to identify those deeper cognitive functions that you're using to reach the conclusions and the statements and your worldviews that you have, or spend time diving really deeply into the functions and understanding and really like making it clear to yourself that it's not behavioral based. It's more to do with, the cognitive process that got you to where your behavior is. What does inferior NI look like to you, or do you notice it manifest? As an NI dominant, I can't imagine life without it, so it would be interesting to see another perspective on that. I'm going to do a whole video on this when I do my video on NI as a cognitive function, but the short answer is that anytime I have to think about anything past next week, really bad at long-term planning, really bad at having like ideals to reach, long-term plans, which I don't think is necessarily the worst thing in the world. It's exhausting to think about those things, and anytime an idea is too big for me, I get overwhelmed and my TE freezes and I'm just like, I want out of that. I want to think about things like that I can work on today or like over the next few weeks, or if I have a big idea, I want exact steps of how I'm going to get there. I don't want the idea first and then work out. It's pretty overwhelming to me. It's better if I've come up with the idea myself, but when I'm receiving it from someone else, I really struggle to give them what they need in that moment in terms of me affirming, validating, or giving them the response that they're after to that idea. Oh, and just one more thing on the NI thing, I'm also really bad at creating patterns of how things will be or how things are when I have no SE data to back it up. So if someone asks my opinions or thoughts on something and I have no experience in that field, I'll just be like, I can't just create patterns or data or information there. Whereas when I have a lot of SE data, I find that the patterns that I have created within myself using the NI are quite accurate. So that's awesome when that happens.
Okay, we've changed scenery, but we are pushing on. Next question. If you could only ask 4 to 5 questions to find someone's MBTI type without literally asking them, what would the questions be? Now, I did stop and think about this because I thought it would be fair to think rather than rattle off the answers off the top of my head. So here are the questions I would ask. Number 1, tell me about yourself. Technically not a question. Number 2, how do you have fun? Number 3, what's your first thought in the morning? Number 4, what do you believe you're really good at? And number 5, if you could give a message to the world, what would it be? I'm pretty confident that from these questions I'd be able to decipher what cognitive tools they're using to filter through their information, but I've never tried it, so. What part of being a content creator most rewards your SE and what part most taxes you? Okay, the part that most rewards my SE is filming, especially when there's like singing or dancing, and especially the interaction skits because I get to sort of play with different styles of acting and those sorts of things, and when I'm filming with a housemate or someone else because it's a lot more fun. And the part that taxes me the most is sitting down and replying to long emails. Of course, it's a necessary part of being on YouTube, so it's a pleasure and I love reading your emails. Yeah, it does tax me. I can't do it all at once, basically. Is it hard for you to detach yourself from your ESFP skits? As an extension, which type is most difficult for you to act as? Interesting. It is very easy for me to detach myself from my ESFP skits because I do ultimately still believe that I'm playing a character when I do it. Although low-key, I kind of believe that I'm playing a character at many points in my life because I'm all about the banter and the jokes and entertaining people 24/7. And the type that is the most difficult for me to act as is probably the INTP or ENTP because I find the NETI thing really hard to nail in terms of physicality because it's way more subtle than an ESTP who's like a bit more exuberant, I think, probably with their gestures and their facial expressions, or an ISTP who I don't find particularly challenging to play because I'm an SP myself. So if I just sort of tone down myself to like the ultimate degree, that's how I do ISTP. But yeah, there's like a subtlety in the facial expressions and the movements and the eye gestures of the NTPs that I often find I have to do multiple takes in order to get one that I'm like happy with. Since ESFPs always look for new experiences, do you find it difficult to be friends with the types who don't use the SE like that? Do you find it difficult to bond with someone who hates something so important to you? No, it's not difficult. I can definitely sense when there's an SE user and there's an element of ease that comes with that. However, I don't find it challenging to bond with other types. I like to think I'm pretty capable at making conversation and forming relationships with people. I ultimately really like figuring out what makes people tick, and so someone who has blind SE, for instance, like an INTP, really fascinates me because their mind works so different from mine. So I would ask lots of questions and in the process probably bond with them. Also, should we judging types worry about perceivers getting bored of us? Lol. I don't think that people being a J has been like a common thread in the things that I've got bored of in my life. In fact, I would pretty confidently say no, you don't have to worry about this. How do you separate TI from FI fluctuated between INTP and INFP? Well, in my experience, INFP is always going to be talking from an emotional framework that they've built based on emotions or values or morals. So they're going to use phrases such as I feel, or like things should be this way in this idealistic world, this is what we should be chasing. Whereas TIs are going to be much more focused on like, this is how things are, this is how the world does work. There is only one way. It's not about it could be this, it could be that. It's about how it is. And also, if you're considering the difference between INTP and INFP will just be notably more in tune to emotional cues from people, in my experience. How long does it usually take for you to create a video from conceptualization to posting it? The video that's taken me the longest to create was the 16 personalities' inferior functions appearing as the angel on their shoulder. That video took me 5 full days to complete, not even work days, I mean like all of the waking hours of those days. It took ages, but it was so worth it because I was really devoted to doing that concept and to doing it semi-well for the resources that I have. And the next longest one was 16 personalities interacting in a horror movie, which took 4 full days. Generally speaking, I usually whack out filming in 1 full day, like from the time I wake up, do my makeup, set up the costumes and everything till like sundown, sometimes like 1.5 days, and then the editing is usually the longest part. Like it will take me, especially with the interaction videos, like it will take me 2 to 3 days of like constant editing. So it's a process. But then there are the really short ones, like the shorts or the ones where I don't have to move the camera at all and I just change my outfit, or the ones where I don't have to move the camera at all and don't have to change my outfit. Those ones I can film within like an hour or 2 hours, and then it takes like the same amount of time to edit, so I can edit those ones in like 5 hours. Sorry, smash it out in 5 hours. The scripts for the interacting videos can sometimes take like a full morning or a full afternoon or a full day if I'm like really chill, because I want all of the characters to interweave really well and naturally, and so it's important to me that the script is like pretty good. With the singular shot ones, the scripts take me like 2 hours usually. Do you feel stressed like every time you watch a new show or you meet new people, you try to guess their type? How do you feel about it? I sometimes, when I'm sitting with someone who I know is into MBTI, I'll speculate about what a character's type is. When I meet someone, I'm not really typing them. In fact, sometimes people ask me, oh, that person you met, what type do you think they are? And I'm like, I actually don't know, didn't think about it. I try not to type people so much anymore because I like to take a break sometimes because I think that's healthy. To be honest with you though, it's pretty easy for me not to type people because I'm not spending a lot of time in my head when I'm getting to know someone. I'm just like lapping up whatever they're giving me in the moment. So which types do you as an ESFP find you gravitate towards more than others? I know everyone can get along, but I'm curious who you generally vibe with and why. Generally, I'm not approaching typology in the sense of like creating patterns and ideas about who I do and don't get along with. It's more creating patterns and ideas about how other people function so that I can then be like a better communicator with them or have a better relationship with them. I just like all the types, so I'm sorry that I can't give you a better answer than that. Okay, so where do you get that energy from? It's funny because I'm living in lockdown at the moment and I feel like I don't have a lot of energy. And also I've been low on iron recently, so my iron deficiency has meant that my energy is extra low. I guess maybe as an ESFP, because I get my energy from external sense data, as long as there's new data and like I'm interacting with it somehow, I'm gonna keep getting energized. So that could be the reason why I am so energetic. And also the fact that I'm doing before anything else, so I'm not really putting things through any kind of filter before I do. First thing I do is do. So I'm getting energy from sense data and I'm acting on it. So that's why I appear as very energetic, perhaps. What do you love the most about being an ESFP? Entertaining people. No question. How do you keep learning our secrets? You guys keep saying that I know your secrets and I'm just like, I really don't. I'm just acting based on what I see and perceive in people and hope that it's right. As for a more serious question, what limitations do you have on creating your videos? Okay, what limitations? The biggest limitations I have on my videos are resources. I literally film everything on, not this phone, but this phone, the phone that I'm currently filming on, and I edit everything on there. I have a computer from 2014 and like a few tripods that friends bought for me and a green screen. I have so many ideas about all these cool skits that I could do. For instance, I really want to do an Agatha Christie style murder mystery skit with the 16 personalities. And I have these ideas. I know exactly where I would set it and I know exactly what I would wear. Resources is definitely a big one. And the fact that I can't leave my house at the moment. So I can really only film things that are in my house. So if you guys have ideas for videos that I can set in my house, that would be fantastic. Because I do have the green screen, but when I use the green screen, it takes significantly longer to edit, and so I have to make sure then that I have the time to do that. In terms of topics that I won't do, I generally would probably like to keep the content pretty like PG-13, so take that as you will. Hi, I love the video where you talk about how if we understand the personality types of others, then we can make them feel free to be themselves around us. If we want to have this fabulous skill, is there a quick guide to doing so? There's no guide. I think it's just about you receiving the person as they are, actually listening to them, actually hearing what they're saying, taking note of how they live their life and how they think and how they process things, paying real close attention to that and creating a space for them to do that. It helps to dive into the cognitive function research to like kind of grab bits and pieces about how they might be operating cognitively. But ultimately, if you just see the person and give them the time of day and actually observe them and put a lot of your focus and attention and energy into that, like what do they like? What do they need from you? Like how do they communicate? What gives them energy? What style of conflict management seems to work the best with them? These are things that we can pay attention to that are going to really affect our ability to allow the person to be their own selves in a safe space. Do you have any tips on differentiating between INFJs and INTJs? Anything you'd use? Because sometimes I really can't tell whether someone has FE and TI or TE and FI. I said something about this earlier in the video, so please refer to that if you'd like. I mean, INTJs have blind FE and INFJs have FE as their second, and INFJs have blind TE and INTJs have TE as their second. So you're gonna ultimately want to look for where the blind spot is. INTJs, for me personally, as I perceive them, it's very easy to see that they don't use FE. Whereas an INFJ is very clear that they do use FE. Have a look at the way that they're speaking, the softness of their voice, how much space and time they're giving to hearing out other people in their emotional needs and how they are trying to achieve emotional harmony. They're willing to compromise to meet the emotional needs of the people in the room, whereas an INTJ will not take that into account. So look for those emotional cues. Easy for me to say as an F because it's really easy for me to pick up on those things. I've been considering starting my own YouTube channel. Any advice about cameras, lighting, content, video, editing, etc.? Okay, I have so much advice. The most important piece of advice is don't focus too much on your camera and lighting setup. Focus on the quality of content. That's what people like at the end of the day. Again, I've been using a phone this entire time. I've been editing and shooting on a phone with like a $30 tripod, and I've slowly been investing in the more expensive stuff. But if you focus on the content, make sure your content is really good. That's what matters. The other stuff, like, let it come later, that's fine. What's your advice to get along with my ESFP grandma? What's your advice to get along with my ESFP grandma and make her laugh? What makes them laugh? What's their humor? Okay, I don't necessarily think that MBTI type deciphers what kind of humor you're going to have, but as a general rule, I would say get your grandma like up on her feet if she can, play a game with her, go for a walk with her, ask her about her days when she was young and what she used to do for fun, get her to tell some of the stories from her youth, bring over snacks or some new kind of treat, cook with her a new fun dish, watch a funny TV show with her, ask about her life, let her entertain you. I've always wondered, do intuitives, especially NI users, look dopey to sensors? No, not dopey, at least not to me. I do find it interesting that bottom SE users don't notice things about their sensory world that I would definitely notice, but I definitely don't think of them as dopey. I wonder what type Dopey from Snow White was. INFP? What do we reckon, guys? Can you walk us through what's going on in your ESFP mind when, for example, you meet a new person? Literally nothing. There's nothing going on in my mind. Like, I'm like, hey, person. Like, no, there's not even that going on in my mind. It's just about doing. It's like, I see person, I walk to person, I talk to person. It's all actions, it's not thought processes. And then I engage, and then what I'm hearing, I immediately respond to. It's all about doing with the top SE user. There's nothing going on in my head when I'm meeting someone new. I'll just ask whatever questions naturally come up and have a good time. What's the best MBTI personality test out there in your opinion? Unfortunately, I don't have an opinion on this, I'm sorry. What's your favorite video you've made so far? Have already addressed that. What's something you haven't already said that you wish the whole typology community knew? Oh man, as an FI user, I feel like I've said all the things I want to say. Like the things I'm passionate about, like importance of communication, with which MBTI helps us with. Let's normalize people being sensors and simultaneously being intelligent, please. It's okay if you're mistyped. Be open to being mistyped. In fact, yes, I'm gonna go with this one. Guys, be open to being mistyped. Be open to the possibility that you might not be the type that you were typed as on the 16 personalities quiz or whatever quiz you took, because the way you're perceiving the questions is going to skew your answer, as I said earlier in this video. So be open to learning your type, be open to diving into the functions, learning more. It's okay to be whatever type you are. Like, there's no type that's worse than any other. That's the message that I'd really like to get out to the community, which I feel like I have in many other videos, so I can't technically say that for this question. It's gonna be great for you to find your real type, so don't be scared of being a sensor, don't be scared of being a feeler, don't be scared of being an introvert or an extrovert or whatever it is. You can be whatever type you are and still whatever you want to be at the same time. What's your favorite dessert? Mine is fried ice cream. Okay, fried ice cream? But frying is hot and ice cream is cold. Okay, what? My favorite dessert is sticky date pudding and then chocolate lava cake with ice cream. Someone close to me took the MBTI test and stuck with their results, but I think that it isn't their actual type. I tried to explain it to them, but they just won't listen. How would you deal with that situation? Look, I understand the frustration. At the same time, you know, MBTI is a tool at the end of the day. People don't have to use it. If people don't want to use it as deep as, you know, applying the 8 cognitive functions, we can't force people to use it. I think as well, when we have people in our lives who aren't open to being typed or aren't open to us telling them what their real type is, which, you know, we all really want to do, that's okay. Just use MBTI as the tool for yourself to be like, right, well, I still perceive that they are using this function. I am then going to apply that in my interaction with them. It doesn't mean I need to talk about MBTI with them. It doesn't mean I need them to tell me that I'm right. It doesn't mean that I need them to know themselves to that depth, because really that's not up to me, that's up to them. So let people use the tool if they want. And if not, you use it yourself, because there can still be so many fruits to using the tool, even if the person doesn't know that you're using it. I find a lot of ESFPs to be quite uninterested in MBTI, but you're not only interested in it, you have a very intelligent feel for all the types. Why do you think that is? Well, I think I lived a lot of my 20s in a state of just sort of being self-interested, going out, doing what I wanted, just being an ESFP meme. And along the way, I, you know, made mistakes, and I, you know, had hard times in friendships, and, you know, I had struggles. And there's a point at which in my sort of mid-20s, a friend of mine said that she was noticing patterns in my behavior. And that was the first time that I turned the mirror and looked at myself and was like, could I be the common thread for why all these things are going wrong in my life? So naturally, I wanted to have a good life, wanted to fix it, wanted to love people, wanted to be loved in return. And then I started diving deep, and then, you know, the patterns that my friend had talked about had, you know, vaguely correlated to the, you know, traits of the ESFP, and I thought about that and I was like, let me dive into this and work out if there's something to this. And then I just dove deeper because I have this conviction, this FI conviction to be a good person and to improve myself. And it's literally been the best decision that I made, and improving myself has like brought so many fruits to my life that now I have the SE data of what it's like to improve oneself and to like all the fruits that it brings in one's life. So now I'm like committed to continuing to improve myself. Huge answer, Kristin. Let's keep them shorter. How do you as a sensor deal with and get so good at theories? Obviously you've gotten really good at MBTI. So my approach at mastering the theory, which I don't really think I've done, to be honest with you, is just having it make its way into my FI heart, my values. I want to get good at it because I have an investment in it. It's like any other theoretical concept. I care about philosophy and theology because I have an FI interest in it. So I get good at it because I care about it. And because research doesn't feel like work to me in the area of these things because I care about them. I would say that most of my knowledge of MBTIs come from like empirical data, specifically observational data, because I'm an SE user and I'm just like, whatever I'm seeing has value to me and is the truth. So let me, you know, create patterns about what I perceive to be happening in all of these observable mannerisms that are happening with people. Then I bring them to YouTube and you guys are like, she's mastered the theory, and I'm like, not quite. Just bringing to the table things that I've observed. What do you think of when doing the dishes? Legit though, I remember your sister brought this up. Gosh, when I'm doing the dishes, well, I'm not thinking about how the soap feels on my hands, as Jenna said I am. I'm not really thinking, I'm just jiving to whatever music I've decided to play for the day, and if there's no music, I'll just cry. No, I'm just kidding. I don't know, if there's something really bothering me that day, like something I need to work through or process or sort through, I'll think about that. But that's always like a feelings-based thing. Do people you know have any influence on how you portray particular personalities? Absolutely, and that's all I'll say on that. How does one determine if they're an I-type or an E-type? Sometimes I wonder if I'm ENTP instead of INTP, but I tend to relate more to INTP stereotypes. Okay, I don't know how to speak into this because I'm not an NTP. In fact, I don't use TI, so it's very hard for me to relate to NTP types. For me, if I was to speak into that from my perspective as an extrovert, the reason I know I'm not an ISFP is because there's no filtering process before the acting of the SE. An ISFP before acting would filter it through the process of the FI. Is this authentic to me? Is this real to me? Is this the right thing to do, like based on who I actually am? Whereas for me, you know, a lot of my life was like acting first and then thinking about that stuff later, and then, you know, realizing through that process who I was. Maybe you could apply that to being an extroverted intuitor versus an introverted thinker. INTPs, ENTPs in the audience, please comment to this question. Were the photos in the ESFP segment of the university professor sketch real? And if so, where were they taken? They absolutely were real. They were taken in Bali. Where have you traveled and where would you like to go once it becomes safe again? Mostly around Asia. I haven't been to Europe. Would love to go to Europe. That's next on the list in answer to your question. What qualities do ESFPs need in a partner? I would say that it's less so specific qualities that an ESFP would need in a partner, and I actually could probably say this is the same for all types, but more so the partner's ability to let them be who they really are and have the freedom to explore that in a safe space. To be explicitly clear about what ESFPs need, they need freedom to be in that first function, that extroverted sensing, to go out and explore, to live, to be free in that. So if they feel stifled in that in any respect, they will not feel safe, or they'll gradually begin to get drained in the relationship, which is not a good thing, obviously. Can you make a video about MBTI shadow functions, and can you give us an option to support you financially? In regards to shadow functions, I potentially will make a video when I know more about them. In regards to supporting me financially, thank you so much. That is very sweet of you. I'm super stoked to announce that I have got a Patreon up and running. It is live at this very moment, so if you guys are interested in generously supporting this channel, please jump down into the description of this video and click on the link to Patreon there to have a look at the different tiers and the options there. Literally anything that you would be willing to give towards supporting this channel would be immensely appreciated. You guys are just incredible, and reading this comment just warmed my heart, so thank you. And last question that we'll do for the day, what ESFP weak spots are you currently working on? Well, Taylor, I am perpetually working on my ability to use the NI in the moment at the party when I'm about to do something stupid, basically. So that's it for the questions today, guys. Thanks for all your submissions. I'm sorry that I didn't get to all of them. There were a lot, but I will keep them in the bank for next time's Q&A video. Cheers, guys, and I will see you next time. Bye!